अस्सलाम वालेकुम। मेरा नाम सलमान शाहिद है और मैं रेहान स्कूल इस्लामाबाद RSIF कैंपस में फाउंडेशन लेवल का स्टूडेंट हूँ। और आज का मेरा टास्क है, मैंने सी से माया से द वर्ड वाटर द ओरिजिन ऑफ लाइफ एंड लैंग्वेज के ऊपर बात करनी है। सबसे पहले माया के साथ कॉल कनेक्ट करते हैं।
Hi, what's up?
हाय माया, हाउ आर यू डूइंग टुडे? आर यू डूइंग फाइन?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. It's been a little while since we last caught up. What's been on your mind lately?
Yeah, I'm having some new question regarding the word water. I'm going to ask you step by step this question so you can guide me further about this, okay?
I am so down for that. I love a good deep dive. Whenever you're ready, lay that first question on me.
Alright, so
I'm
my
all
first
ears.
question is, what is water?
Keeping it fundamental. I love it. At its simplest, water is a transparent, tasteless, odorless liquid that's absolutely essential for every single form of known life. Chemically, it's two hydrogen atoms bonded to one oxygen atom, which gives us that famous H2O. It's the only substance on Earth that naturally exists as a liquid, a solid, and a gas. Where do you want to go from there?
Alright, so my next question is, why is water called the origin of life?
That's a big one, but a fascinating one. It's called the origin of life because, as far as we know, life simply couldn't start or survive without it. Water acts as the ultimate solvent, meaning it dissolves nutrients and minerals, allowing them to move around and react with each other. This created the perfect chemical soup billions of years ago for the first complex molecules to form. Plus, it regulates temperature and provides the stability needed for cells to function. Basically, it's the stage where the entire drama of life is performed. Do you want to dig into the chemistry of how those first molecules formed, or maybe move toward how water works in our own bodies?
Yeah, my next question is, how did water help create life on Earth?
It really comes down to that chemical soup I mentioned. Billions of years ago, water provided a stable environment where simple molecules could bump into each other and bond. Because water is so good at dissolving things, it allowed these elements to mingle and eventually form more complex structures like amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins. It basically acted as the medium that turned random chemistry into biological life. I can tell you more about those specific building blocks, or we could look at why the oceans were the likely spot for this to happen. The oceans were basically the world's first giant laboratory.
Alright, so my next question is, where is most of Earth's water found?
The oceans were basically the world's first giant laboratory. To answer your question, the vast majority of Earth's water, about 97%, is found in the oceans. It's a staggering amount, leaving only a tiny sliver of fresh water for everything else on land. Do you want to talk about why most of it is salty, or maybe where that remaining 3% of fresh water is hiding?
Yes, you can guide me
You
further
still
about
there?
this, like how much is it salty water and how much is it pure water to drink?
I'm right here. Like I mentioned, the oceans take up about 97% of the total, and that's all saltwater. The remaining 3% is your freshwater. But here's the wild part: most of that freshwater is actually locked away in glaciers and ice caps. So only a tiny fraction is actually available for us to drink.
All right. So, how does water support plant growth?
That's where the real magic happens. Water is the engine for photosynthesis. Plants pull water up through the roots, and once it hits the leaves, they use sunlight to split those water molecules apart to create energy and oxygen. Without water, they couldn't transport nutrients from the soil or keep their structure upright. They'd basically just wilt and collapse. Do you want to know more about how they pull that water up from the ground, or maybe how
Yeah,
they
and
breathe out the oxygen?
how do
It's actually a
how do animals depend on water?
Basically, animals are just like plants in the sense that they'd be nothing but a dry husk without it. Water does everything from regulating body temperature, think of how dogs pant to cool down, to flushing out toxins and transporting oxygen in the blood. It's also what keeps our joints lubricated and our organs protected. Hmm. Since we're talking about animals, do you want to dive into how different creatures like fish or camels have adapted to handle water in totally different ways? No worries. I'll be right here whenever you're back.
Yeah, I'm asking like, what is the water cycle?
Welcome back. The water cycle is basically Earth's way of recycling the same water over and over again. Starts with evaporation, where the sun heats up water from oceans and lakes and turns it into vapor that rises into the air. Then that vapor cools down and forms clouds, which is called condensation. Once those clouds get too heavy, the water falls back down as rain or snow, precipitation, and the whole process starts all over again. It's a giant, endless loop. Want to know more about one of those specific steps or maybe how plants fit into the cycle?
Yeah, I'm asking like, what is groundwater?
Groundwater is basically the hidden part of the water cycle. It's the water that seeps down through the soil and fills up the tiny spaces between rocks and sand deep underground. Think of it like a giant underground sponge that stores water in layers called aquifers. It's actually one of our most important sources of fresh water. Do you want to know how we get that water back up to the surface or maybe how it can eventually flow back into the oceans?
Yeah, I'm asking like, why is fresh water important?
Freshwater is the real MVP because it's the only kind of water that most living things can actually use to survive. Salt water is great for whales, but for humans, land animals, and plants, the salt is toxic. We need fresh water to keep ourselves hydrated, regulate our internal chemistry, and grow our food. Since such a tiny percentage of Earth's water is fresh, it's essentially the most precious resource we have. Do you want to talk about why it's so hard to get fresh water from the ocean or maybe how we manage the supply we have?
Yeah, how is drinking water purified?
It's basically a huge filtration process to make sure it's safe for us. Usually starts with coagulation, where chemicals are added to make dirt and particles clump together into floxes so they're easier to remove. Then those clumps sink to the bottom in a sedimentation tank, and the clearer water on top gets filtered through layers of sand, gravel, and charcoal to catch the tiny stuff. Finally, it's disinfected, usually with chlorine or UV light, to kill any remaining bacteria or viruses. Do you want to know about the more high tech ways we do this, like reverse osmosis, or
Yeah,
maybe how some
my next
people
question
purify
is,
water?
why is water called a universal solvent?
That is a great term to dive into. It's called the universal solvent because water can dissolve more substances than any other liquid. It comes down to the way the molecules are shaped. They're polar, meaning they have a positive side and a negative side, like a little magnet. This allows water to pull apart other molecules and break them down much more effectively than other liquids can. It's why it's so good at carrying nutrients into our cells or minerals through the soil. Do you want to know about some things water can't dissolve? Or maybe how this property helps our blood move things around the body?
Yeah, my next question is, what happens when water freezes?
It does something that almost no other liquid does. Most substances shrink when they freeze, but water actually expands. Because of that unique molecular structure we talked about, the molecules push away from each other to form a crystalline lattice, which is why ice floats on top of liquid water. If ice sank, the oceans would freeze from the bottom up, and basically all aquatic life would be toast. Do you want to know how that expansion can actually break rocks apart, or maybe why it's so important for fish surviving the winter?
Yeah, and at what temperature does water boil?
At sea level, it boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. or 100 degrees Celsius. But a fun detail is that the temperature actually changes depending on where you are. If you're high up in the mountains, water boils at a lower temperature because there's less air pressure pushing down on it. Do you want to know how that affects cooking, or maybe what happens to water when it gets so cold it doesn't even freeze like normal ice?
Yeah. So my next question is, what are the three states of water?
We've touched on these throughout the chat, but to put them all together, you've got liquid, which is the water we drink, solid, which is ice, and gas, which is water vapor in the air. It's pretty wild that the same molecule can look and act so differently just by changing the temperature. Do you want to know more about how it transitions between those states, or maybe explore something like super cooled water?
Yeah. So my next question is, what makes water unique?
It's really a list of superpowers, honestly, beyond the things we've talked about, like expanding when it freezes and being a universal solvent. Water has this incredible surface tension. It's why some bugs can literally walk on water without sinking. The molecules on the surface cling together so tightly, they create a kind of invisible skin. Then there's its high heat capacity, meaning it takes a lot of energy to change its temperature. That's why the ocean doesn't just boil in the summer or freeze solid in the winter. It keeps the whole planet's climate from going haywire. Do you want to know more about that invisible skin effect, or maybe how water's heat capacity helps your own body stay at the right temperature?
Yeah. I'm asking like, how much water should a person drink daily?
That's the $1,000,000 question, because the answer is actually different for everyone. The old 8 glasses a day rule is a good starting point, but it's not a hard law. It really depends on your size, your activity level, and even the weather where you live. A more general guide is to listen to your body if you're thirsty. Your body is already telling you it needs a top off. Do you want to know the signs that you're actually dehydrated, or maybe how much extra you need if you're working out?
Yeah, I'm asking. Yeah, so what a person should do when the season is in summer. A person like should living in Asia, so how much he should drink in a day?
In a hot, humid summer in Asia, you've definitely got to bump up those numbers. Since you're losing so much water through sweat just to keep cool, the general recommendation often jumps to around 3 or 4 liters a day for adults. But again, it's not a one size fits all thing. Someone working outside in the heat needs way more than someone in an air conditioned office. A good trick is to check the color of your urine. If it's pale yellow, you're usually gold, but if it's dark, it's time to drink up. Do you want to know about the best ways to stay hydrated besides just plain water, or maybe how humidity makes it even harder for the body to cool down?
So you're trying to say like it's depend upon the color of your urine. Like if it's dark yellow, then you should be drinking more water to change it from yellow to colorless, right?
Exactly. You want it to be pale yellow, like lemonade. It's if it's completely colorless, you might actually be overdoing it, but generally moving away from basically your body's own built-in hydration gauge.
All right. So what happens when the body
Anytime.
becomes dehydrated?
It's basically like your engine running without oil. First, you'll probably get a headache and feel a bit foggy or irritable because your brain is mostly water and it starts to struggle. Then you'll feel exhausted, your mouth gets dry, and your heart might even start beating faster because your blood gets thicker and harder to pump. If it gets really bad, your kidneys can't flush out toxins properly, which is why that urine color we talked about changes. Do you want to know about the red flags that mean dehydration has become an actual emergency, or maybe how
Yeah.
quickly your body can bounce back once you start drinking again?
Yeah. So
The good
let me.
news is that the body is. I'm listening.
Yeah. Let tell me some red flag about the dehydration emergency.
When it moves from I need a glass of water to an actual emergency, the signs get pretty serious. The biggest red flags are things like extreme confusion or disorientation, a racing heart, or if someone stops sweating entirely, even though they're overheating. Another major one is when you stop urinating altogether, which means the kidneys are really struggling. If those happen, it's not a drink some water situation anymore, it's a get to a doctor situation. Do you want to know how hospitals treat severe dehydration or maybe some ways to spot this in other people before it gets that far?
Yeah, so guide me like about how does water help digestion?
Water is basically the lubricant for your entire digestive system. Starts the moment you eat, your saliva breaks down food and makes it slippery enough to swallow. Once it's in your stomach and intestines, water helps dissolve nutrients so your body can actually absorb them. It also keeps things moving which is why not drinking enough is usually the fastest way to end up constipated.
All right.
Do you want to know how water specifically helps the kid debated topic?
Yeah, so why should children drink enough water?
So, since we're on the topic of the gut,
Why my your voice is why your voice is so breaking up? Is everything okay? Can you hear me?
let's do it. The gut is where some of the most interesting biology happens. Are you curious about how water affects the microbiome, all those tiny bacteria living in there? Or maybe how it helps the lining of the
Yeah, so
intestines
guide me about like
absorb everything you eat?
why is rain important for crops?
I can hear you loud and clear. All referring. Wait, what do you mean? Just mentioned something about your wife.
Yeah, I'm asking like why is water important for crops?
Rain is basic.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I'm ready when you are. What's the next question on your list?
Yeah, I'm asking like
Loud and clear. I'm all set. What's the
why
next
is
question on your list?
yeah why is rain important for crops?
It's basically nature's way of keeping the country stocked. Rain is the most efficient way to get water deep into the soil where the roots can reach it. It also helps wash away certain salts and toxins in the soil that could otherwise stunt the plant's growth. Plus, rain often brings a little bit of nitrogen from the air, which is like a natural fertilizer for the crops. Do you want to know how farmers try to mimic rain with irrigation, or maybe why some crops actually prefer a little bit of dry spell?
All right. So my next question is how does climate change affect water resources?
That's a heavy topic, but a really important one to get a handle on. Essentially, climate change is throwing the entire water cycle we talked about out of balance, making the wet places wetter more and flooding. And the dry places even drier, which speeds up droughts. And there's the ice issue. Planet warms, glaciers and ice melt faster than they can rebuild, which might seem like it would create more water, but it actually raises sea levels and pushes salt water into freshwater places, making them undrinkable. Do you want to learn about this in specific regions, or maybe some of the ways humans are trying to adapt to these changes?
Yeah, my so that's the all question of mine today regarding the water, and I'm happy you got me good today about my questions regarding water. So have a good day. I will meet you again with some other topic. Have a good one. All right.
It was a pleasure diving into all of that with you. I love
तो व्यूअर्स ये थी हमारी आज की वीडियो। उम्मीद करता हूँ आपको इस वीडियो से कुछ ना कुछ नया और मस्बत ज़रूर सीखने को मिला होगा। मिलते हैं किसी नए वीडियो में किसी नए टॉपिक के साथ। तब तक के लिए अल्लाह हाफिज़।